I have a message. No, I don't. I mean, you do. But also, you don't. It depends on how your brain is currently handling uncertainty. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Your brain doesn't just dislike uncertainty. It treats it like a threat. Like something is already going wrong, even when nothing has actually happened yet. You're just sitting there, waiting for a reply, waiting for results, waiting for news that may not even be bad. But your stomach tightens anyway. Your thoughts start looping anyway. Your future suddenly feels blurry and unstable anyway. That's not random. That's uncertainty intolerance in action. And it quietly shapes more of your daily experience than you realize. Psychologists call it intolerance of uncertainty psychology. And it basically describes how some brains struggle to function when outcomes are unknown. Because your brain is not designed to feel comfortable with, I don't know. It is designed for survival. And survival depends on prediction. Your brain is constantly acting like a prediction machine, trying to forecast what will happen next so it can prepare in advance. But uncertainty breaks that system. When your brain cannot predict the outcome, it experiences something called prediction error processing. In simple terms, it means, my model of reality failed. And when that happens, your brain doesn't stay calm. It escalates. It shifts into threat perception mode. Deep inside your brain, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection system, starts firing. Not because something dangerous is definitely happening, but because something unknown is happening. And, in the brain's logic, unknown often equals unsafe. So the amygdala activates. Amygdala hyperactivation begins. And suddenly, your stress response system turns on. Cortisol and adrenaline are released into your body. Your heart rate increases under anxiety. Your muscles tighten without you noticing. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your body starts preparing for danger that hasn't arrived yet. This is the physiological stress response. And it is completely automatic. You don't choose it. It chooses you. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Research in neurobiology of anxiety shows that people with high uncertainty intolerance react more strongly to this system. Even small unknowns feel like big threats. Not because reality is more dangerous for them, but because their brain amplifies uncertainty itself. It becomes the threat, not the outcome. Just the not knowing. This is why anxiety and uncertainty are so tightly connected. Because anxiety is often not about what is happening. It is about what might happen. Your brain starts running simulations constantly. What if this goes wrong? What if that message means something bad? What if I lose control? And this is where rumination takes over. Your default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for mind wandering, kicks in. It starts generating endless scenarios, endless futures, endless possibilities, most of them negative. And this loop doesn't give clarity. It creates more confusion because your brain is trying to solve uncertainty by thinking harder about it. But uncertainty is not a logic problem. It is a regulation problem. And when regulation fails, people start developing coping behaviors. Compulsive checking behavior, reassurance seeking, over-planning behavior, control-seeking behavior, avoidance behavior. You check your phone again. You ask again. You think one more time just to be sure. But nothing actually resolves. Because uncertainty cannot be solved through control. It can only be tolerated. Psychologists describe two main forms of intolerance of uncertainty. Prospective IU, the constant need to know what will happen in advance. And inhibitory IU, when uncertainty completely shuts you down, creating psychological paralysis. One leads to overthinking, the other leads to freezing. But both come from the same root. Your brain cannot sit comfortably in the unknown. And this is where decision-making becomes difficult. Because when uncertainty is high, cognitive control systems in the brain struggle. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic, planning, and regulation, starts losing influence over the amygdala. The inferior frontal cortex and orbitofrontal cortex regions involved in emotional regulation and evaluating outcomes also become less efficient under stress. So your brain stops acting like a calm decision maker and starts acting like an alarm system. Now, from a cognitive neuroscience of fear perspective, there is something very important to understand. Your brain would often prefer a guaranteed negative outcome over an unknown outcome, because at least a negative outcome is predictable. Predictability feels like control, and control feels like safety, even if the result is bad. That's how deeply the threat perception system is wired. Uncertainty feels worse than pain, because pain is defined. Uncertainty is infinite, and infinite threat is unbearable for the brain. So what does it do? It tries to eliminate uncertainty through mental effort, but that effort turns into rumination. And rumination feeds anxiety, and anxiety increases threat perception. And the cycle repeats. At the same time, your emotional regulation system becomes overloaded. You start feeling emotional overwhelm. Stress hormones stay elevated longer. Your body remains in a state of alert. Over time, this can contribute to chronic anxiety disorders and even depression and uncertainty-related fatigue. Because living in constant prediction, failure is exhausting. Your brain is never allowed to settle. It is always preparing, always scanning, always simulating. Now, on a deeper level, this is also tied to something called anticipatory threat response. It means your brain reacts not to reality, but to anticipation of reality. So even thinking about uncertainty can trigger stress. This is why simply not knowing something can feel physically uncomfortable. You don't just think uncertainty, you feel it in your chest, in your stomach, in your posture. Muscle tension response builds. Your body becomes part of the fear loop. This is embodied cognition in action. Your thoughts and your body are not separate systems. They are one feedback loop. Now here is where psychology and meaning systems intersect. Because humans don't only cope with uncertainty through logic, they also cope through belief systems, trust psychology, and spiritual psychology. When someone practices trust, whether in people, meaning, or faith, the brain begins to reinterpret uncertainty differently. Instead of labeling it as threat, it starts labeling it as unknown but safe. This is cognitive reappraisal, and it is powerful. Because it reduces amygdala activation, it strengthens prefrontal amygdala regulation. It lowers stress hormone output. It helps the brain exit survival mode. This is why practices like prayer and meditation are often linked to neural calming mechanisms and emotional stabilization. They don't remove uncertainty, they change your relationship to it. And that shift is everything. Because once uncertainty is no longer treated as danger, the brain can finally rest. Some psychological frameworks even describe this as surrender psychology. Not giving up, but letting go of control that was never real in the first place. This is also where acceptance-based coping and mindfulness come in. Instead of fighting uncertainty, you acknowledge it. You name it. I don't know what will happen. And in that moment, something subtle changes in the brain. The threat signal weakens. The prediction loop slows. And emotional regulation returns. Even simple somatic techniques like grounding your body, relaxing your shoulders, or using a handoff gesture can signal safety to the nervous system. Because the brain listens to the body, not just thoughts. Over time, this builds what psychologists call uncertainty tolerance training. The brain learns, I can survive not knowing. And that is the foundation of emotional resilience. Not certainty, but stability in uncertainty. And that is the real goal, not to predict everything, not to control everything, but to stop treating the unknown as an enemy, because life was never meant to be fully known in advance. It was meant to be lived in motion. So if this resonated with you, don't just leave it here. Like the video, subscribe, and stick around. Because once you understand how your brain handles uncertainty, you start realizing how much of your life was never actually about reality, but about prediction.